Alright, so today we're working on redoing the fork seals and oil and the forks on this 85 Goldwing. And so we're going to start down on the bottom, taking apart all the bits and pieces down here. So the first thing we're going to do is I already have the front wheel off because I had the tires replaced. I also have the front brakes off because I'm in the process of replacing the calipers. I'm waiting for new ones to show up. So if everything was still on, you would have to disconnect the wheel speed sensor, and that's got a Phillips down here that you just take out and get this cable out of the way. You wouldn't need to remove these brackets, I don't believe, but you will probably have to remove the calipers, so you'd have to take the two bolts out of here and remove the calipers off of the holding brackets. And also on bottom is these axle holding things, right? And I got to take this one off this side, so I'll do it really fast. We're going to get these out of the way because the drain bolt to drain the oil out of these is up in here, and it's a 6mm Allen key, right? It's going to go up in here. So we're going to remove those and let it start draining in the pan, and we're going to remove the front fender, which is going to be some tins in here, so then we can remove hopefully this bracket so we can take the forks off one at a time.
Alright, so here I am breaking loose the oil drain plug. You're going to see I get that in there, and I'm going to start getting the oil to drain out on this side. When I go to the other side, I end up having some difficulties. Long story short, I'm going to round off this bolt and give myself a lot more work to do today. Here I'm removing these tins for the front fender. There's 4, 2 on either side. After I get it wiggled out, I'm going to start removing the fork holding bracket down low. I left the left drain bolt in because it wasn't totally stripped yet, and I was waiting for my friend to come and help hold the handlebars so I could get a little more stability holding and try to break that loose, but it ended up not making a difference whatsoever. The bolts for the holding bracket have little caps I just pried off with a screwdriver. They were really tight, so you see I'm using my breaker bar here to help get them loose. They're all 6mm Allen keys as well.
Okay, going to start working on making this stuff ready to take off at the top. Eventually these caps are going to have to come off, and probably this little Allen bolt down in here. Don't know if you can see it. So anyway, this is going to pop off. Going to be 2 screws here, and then whatever I think is holding this piece of plastic on down there.
All right, now that my friend's here, I'm going to go ahead and completely round this off.
No, I think I turned it into a circle. Yeah.
My bolt extractor is slightly larger than the bolt head, so I am drilling it out just a little bit so I can get a good bite in there with the extractor, which ends up working beautifully, rare for an extractor.
Okay.
So pretty soon we're going to see why I reattached the one bolt for the fork holding piece earlier. It's so that the fork doesn't rotate when I go to break this second one loose. If I would have taken it off, I probably would have had to put it back together because the lower part of the fork can rotate around freely from the upper half. So it's something that we need to be careful of. Make sure you break these bolts loose before you take that holding bracket off in between the two.
Check that out. Up here? Yeah. Oh, that's water. Really water. Wait, there's a little that. Yeah. I'll just clear it. Yeah, see what there. There's a little copper portion on it. Stop that off the ground. Yep. You can probably find it.
Here we are very carefully picking the dust seal off, making sure not to mar the surface, and then looking down, and I'm not sure what the sludge I peel out is above the bushing. I'll show you a better look of it later, but it's absolutely disgusting, and I'm not sure what it's actually supposed to be. It's not part of the bushing, it's not part of the seal, and it's not part of the snap ring, obviously. Here's my buddy picking out the plastic washer. You'll see it later in the video. It is above the snap ring, so we have to remove it very, very carefully. He's using 2 picks on the outer edge, not to scratch the chrome upper tube. The piece of wood is going under here, so that when this pulls off, I ram it into the wood and don't mess up the threads. As you can see there, it went right into the piece of wood. Now we're breaking it loose. These nuts up top, I had my friend holding the handlebars so they don't rotate, and I'm using the towel to help make sure, well, I will be using the towel to make sure that the caps don't go flying because they are spring-loaded. I think it's a 24 mil up here, by the way.
Extending slowly. That bottom piece. Let's see, well, it should fall out stuff on the top. It's just a cap. How many threads, bro? Well, that's how we'll probably do a good job, like, deflecting that nut. Yeah. Seems like it dampened the forces pretty significantly.
Here we are taking off that second cap in regular speed. Tons of threads, so always very nervous, but taking my time, make sure the towel's there to catch it when it does eventually come out.
Oh, there we go.
Now with the caps off, I'm loosening the 6mm fork holders. There's one up high near the cap and two down lower. I reached some of the lower ones from the top, some from the bottom. I think
There
I
are
give you
two
a couple
more
camera
holding
angles.
screws down in here. I'm trying to get to where you can see them. Alright, but it's right on this bracket that I'm aiming the camera toward. Alright, you can see that sliver there where they loosen up, so we're going to try to reach in there and break these loose. Oh, fucking damn, it hurt. There's also this little groove here that the spring goes into, which has to come off for the side again. We've got our forks all cleaned up here, my buddy. I'm still trying to do this all taken more stuff apart. And we still like to do. There's a water spring side here. This will pop out on top of this spring, and the cap that goes on the outside of this is a little starter ring, which on first one's right off, on the second one's like pause and take off. This is our oil gasket guy, snap ring goes on top of it, little bushing guy goes on top of that, and then our dust slider, and this whole tube sits inside the lower part of the fork. And this will be on the interior, where that ring bolt goes into, which we got to through that hole. So next we're going to coat these with some ATF and wood up. We're going to start sliding stuff back together, putting on the new gaskets, driving them down, put everything back together, and we'll start going back on bike.
Here's an example of me reaching those lower fork holding nuts and then pulling the forks out once they are loose enough to do so. There are retainer rings at the top, so you have to slide it down a little bit, and there will be a very small ring you have to slide off to get it off the bottom. On this fork, it came off. On the other side, I pull on it and pull on it, and it doesn't come off. It's because there's a little ring, and you'll see it here at the end of this clip.
there's also this little groove here that this ring goes into, which has to come off for it to slide all the way down. We've got our forks all cleaned up here. My buddy was so kind as to do this while I was taking more stuff apart. And we can see the whole thing. So we got the tube, there's a larger spring inside here. This is what popped out on top. There's this spring and the cap that goes on. On the outside of this is a little stopper ring, which on the first one slid right off. On the second one, that's what I had to pause and take off. And this is the order. This is our oil gasket guy. Snap ring goes on top of it. Little bushing guy goes on top of that. And then our dust slider. And this whole tube sits inside the lower part of the fork. And this would be on the interior where that drain bolt threads into, which we got to through that hole. So what we're going to do next is we're going to coat these with some ATF to get them lubed up. We're going to start sliding stuff back together and putting on the new gaskets, driving them down and putting everything back together, and we'll start throwing them back on the bike. Right.
Okay, so here we go actually rebuilding the forks, getting the ATF on, just so it's easier to slide things together. I'm also pre-lubing the inside of the oil gasket, so it's a little bit easier to slip on. I'm also double checking to make sure I put it right side up. So I did look at the old one just to make sure. That ring you saw pop out was the ring that sits on top of the large spring inside of the upper fork, and it came off because when I dropped it down, the upper fork slid deep into the lower one. I'm now putting in the drain bolt, which is going to help hold the fork together as I do all this work.
That's probably instantly enough of this little better. Especially back where stuff behind you, basically.
Alright, it is official. You're going to need something to drive it in with. Got my custom 2-piece driver tool here. We'll see what it does.
So I have my homemade fork gasket driver here made out of halves of PVC. It was really close to fitting without cutting it, but not quite. So I start by using my hand and trying to slam it down in there, but eventually I just start using half and very carefully tapping it in the rest of the way with a small hammer. While I'm driving it in, I'm looking for a recess in the upper portion of the lower half of the fork where the clip ring, the snap ring, goes into. The first time I go to put the snap ring in, it's not quite low enough, so I drive it a hair lower, and I'll check it again and again. You'll see that a bit later, and then I eventually get that snap ring placed in totally. There I am visually inspecting for the ring, for the snap ring, and deciding I need to go a little bit lower. Here in a few frames you can also see that upper spring hanging out, which is that extra ring you saw pop out earlier. I'm cleaning out some of the debris from the PVC that I thought I'd cleaned off well enough, but not quite. So I'm cleaning it out. I actually take the fork and blow it out with some air to make sure there's no debris in there before I put the ring in. That's when I decided that it wasn't in quite deep enough, it wasn't seating properly, So I tap it in a few more times, and then I go ahead and put the snap ring in for the last time. I go and I blow out the fork another time since I got more PVC debris in it. In goes the snap ring, the white rubber bushing. I'm going to pre-lube this new dust seal and then just push it in with my hands. Here I am much later. On the opposite fork, I had to go to town to get an M8 by 1.25 by 25 bolt to screw in the bottom. I took the old copper washer off of the old one, flipped it over because it is a crush washer, and then put it in the bottom. You'll see that this fork goes much faster. I have a lot more confidence in terms of what I'm doing now. I'm pre-lubing this fork as well. Then I'm going to pre-lube that oil ring. I'm going to start sliding it over with my hand and then driving it in just like I did the other side. I found that sliding it down with my hands really didn't work that well, so I switched back to the hammer pretty quickly and just doing one piece and rotating frequently. That way I'm not driving one side of the oil ring down too far. I actually cut open my hand on the first fork, so that's why I abandoned the idea quickly on this one and just switched to the hammer. Again, taking big care not to damage the upper fork. That's why I have the paper towel up there as well. Same thing, I go and I blow out some of the debris, make sure it's clean. Snap rings going in, followed by the white plastic bushing. And then I'm going to pre-lube the dust seal and drive it in with my hands.
All right, now that the new seals are on the forks or in the forks, it's time to start putting them back on the bike. As you can see, I still have these top springs that go underneath the filler caps out. I assume I'm going to have to compress these down as I go to thread this in, so that ought to be a trick. But I'm going to start getting these mounted back up on the bike, then we're going to fill them with fluid. We're going to be using more of the ATF in here. Also on this is the one I stripped. I had to go to Lowe's and I grabbed a bolt. It was an M8 by 1.25, and I think it was like by 25 or so. But now it's time for these to go on the bike. Super exciting.
So if I were to do this again, I would fill them with fluid off of the bike and compress those caps into it also off of the bike. I'm able to do it, but you'll see later that it is an absolute miracle that I did not destroy the threads. I found this old measuring cup in the basement that would be perfect for this. It's taken 345 milliliters of ATF. Again, this worked really well for the shocks to stay upright and for them to accept the fluid, but ends up becoming very difficult to get the caps on. Okay, so this is what I was talking about when I said it is an absolute miracle I didn't strip these out. Because I had to push down so hard, I could not turn it with the ratchet, so I put the impact socket on my impact and pushed down as hard as I can and pulled the trigger, and I happened to get it straight. I was 2 for 2 and able to make getting it to work. But again, I wouldn't recommend doing it this way. It was very, very difficult, and I consider myself lucky for maintaining the threads. I didn't slam them down with the impact. I go ahead and I use the ratchet to tighten them the rest of the way. So that was the one redeeming quality of this method. Here we are getting this new front tire on, which is exciting. The bike is one step closer to being done. Super stoked about this. Reattaching the wheel speed sensor was super simple. It was just a single Phillips. And go ahead and put on these axle holding brackets. I believe those are 14s, if I recall. Here I am actually attaching the wheel speed. It looks kind of like a Phillips blade on the wheel, and then you're lining it up with the cable itself, which just rotates. So you can slip it on at whatever angle, and then tightening it down with one screw. There's 2 brackets for the brake lines. They have little rubber rings around them where they're supposed to hook in, so it should be snug. So I replaced those, and now I'm actually tightening on the axle holding brackets.
Well, we're going to call that a wrap with the new front tire on, and the forks are done. I was reading that this is about a full day's job. I've never done this before. I started around noon. It's about 7 right now, but I took, I went out and I got lunch. I went out and got dinner and had to go buy a new bolt. So probably 5 or 6 hours first time doing it. Not too bad. Certainly a couple things that I could have planned better. Hindsight being 2020, I probably wouldn't have done it the way I did it. I probably would have tried to put these caps on off the bike so that I could really put my weight down on it rather than the way I did it. It's pretty miraculous that I did not absolutely obliterate these threads, but they're both in there. So life is good. Finished cranking them down by hand as you saw, and that is it. Soon I'm going to go ahead one night this week and throw the right saddlebag and the rear fender back on after I put on the new rear wheel. I won't put on the left saddlebag until I do the brakes, so I'll leave that off
That way I am able to do it. And when the new brakes get here, which is hopefully this week, because I decided to order calipers rather than rebuild the ones I got. Once those are on, it should be a motorcycle, unless I'm forgetting something right now, which I very well could be. Well, it needs a windshield. This is terrible. I mean, it's terrible. I put some linseed oil on it, and you know, you can almost see through it now, but yeah, that's not good at all. Oh man, with the backlighting, that's even worse. So, shy of that, but otherwise, should be in business. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time.